Entertainment in the Old West was as wild as frontier life itself. Fun was often tinged with danger, and entertainers were always looking to make a buck. Here's how folks in the Wild West let loose. There are aspects of the Wild West that have been glamorized beyond their actual historical authenticity, the sheer wildness of it, for instance. But one thing that was just as big as we're led to believe is the presence of gambling. Gambling was so widespread in the American West that saloons had to hire employees whose specific job was to keep the gambling tables in order, which could prove difficult since gambling wasn't always fun and games.
500 must be a peach of a hand.
Early iterations of Western gambling were solely recreational and meant to provide a little entertainment to hardworking frontier laborers. But what it became in the saloons of the Wild West was more serious and often even deadly. And it wasn't just poker or craps. According to the website Legends of America, gamblers played with their back to the wall and their guns at their sides, as dealers dealt games with names such as Chuck-a-Luck, Three-Card Monte, High Dice, and Pharaoh. It makes sense that gambling was popular in the West. Anyone who'd leave behind their comfortable life out east to pursue riches on the frontier was already a risk taker. But games often ended with guns drawn amid accusations of cheating, and when tensions erupted, things rarely went well. While gambling is carried on into the modern day, it's hard to find an equivalent for the Old West medicine show, an entertainment staple of the time. People flocked en masse to medicine shows, which were exactly what they sound like. Someone got up and pitched a brand new medicine meant to heal all ailments. The salespeople were such showmen that the pitch itself became a reliable form of entertainment, hence the large crowds. The medicine show also borrowed elements from circuses and sideshows, but the end goal was to make a sale. For the audience, they either wanted to find a cure for what ailed them, or they wanted to gawk at the showmanship on display. And the medicine show business raked it in to the tune of about $80 million a year, which goes to show just how popular they were.
To those of you who have suffered from ills and aches, I come to you with the glad tidings that there is hope.
While the sales pitch for a cure-all may sound dull, the shows were dazzling. They included everything from burlesque to pie-eating contests to dog and pony shows. In addition, the salespeople dressed up to impersonate Quakers, Native Americans, and more, all in the name of putting money in their pockets. As for the quote-unquote medicine, who knows? What is more Wild West than the saloon? A lot of frontier entertainment took place in saloons, but they were, in and of themselves, massive hubs of amusement.
You know, good smelly saloon. My favorite place in the world.
You could gamble at a saloon, but you could also drink, listen to music, fraternize, and otherwise make merry. And of course, saloons often doubled as brothels. In fact, at the time, women weren't even allowed in saloons. Those who worked there were there for one thing: sex work.
You're okay with your girlfriend screwing like 15 different guys every day and getting paid to do it?
Oh, well, my job sucks too.
The saloon was the epicenter of any camp or town. It's where everyone went. And the forms of entertainment found within their walls were just as diverse as the population they attracted. Soldiers, miners, and laborers of all sorts gathered in the town saloon, or saloons, plural. In Livingston, Montana, a town of 3,000, there were 33 saloons. That's one for every 100 people. Whiskey was the main beverage served, but it wasn't whiskey by today's standards. It was raw alcohol, burnt sugar, and chewing tobacco. They also served cactus wine, which brought together tequila and peyote tea, as well as room temperature beer, straight rye liquor, and the aptly named rot gut, which was a terrifying 100 proof liquor that was commonly mixed with things like turpentine, ammonia, gunpowder, and cayenne. Many cultures throughout history thought nothing drew a crowd like seeing someone hang from the gallows, with public, often ritualistic ceremonies to showcase the power of the law to the public. Of course, it was more than entertainment. A public hanging was an ideal way for the powerful to show the powerless what happened when you broke the rules. They also found a certain delight in the gruesome deaths of others. The presentation would have been quite elaborate. First would come the procession from the jailhouse, with the condemned bound and surrounded by law officers. Citizens could follow the procession from the start, hurling insults or cabbages, barking for their release, or perhaps even grieving if they knew the condemned. Once the condemned reached the gallows, they were given last rites and hung by their neck to the cheers and jeers of the crowd. While public hangings weren't an everyday affair, they weren't uncommon. The Los Angeles Sheriff's Department describes 40 legal hangings and 32 vigilante executions taking place between 1851 and 1874. And that's just Los Angeles. Another California town, formerly known as Old Dry Diggins, was renamed Hangtown after a slew of hangings in 1849. 5 years later, they changed the name again, but regardless, a lot of nooses dangled around the Old West. Believe it or not, organized sports did in fact exist in the Old West, and one of the most popular sports for participants and audiences alike was boxing.
Oh man, this is going to be a fair fight.
Not like the last time.
They had titles and fought for prizes, including money and trophies. And while local governments waffled between outlawing boxing or not, the public made it clear. They really wanted to see two men beat the snot out of each other. In fact, where boxing was illegal, loopholes were found, like staging a play in a theater where one of the acts happened to include a boxing match, which was the reason why everyone was really there. The excitement surrounding a match was much like today. There was plenty of betting, and before the match itself, people would speculate, discuss, argue, and fight over who would win. After the match, the same discussions ensued. Who deserved the win, who fought dirty, and was the referee biased? OK Corral participant Wyatt Earp actually refereed boxing matches and became a well-known face on the West Coast boxing circuit. And while boxing was technically illegal in San Francisco in 1891, that didn't stop the Mechanics Pavilion from selling 10,000 tickets. Few things are more American than a good old-fashioned rodeo, even though the sport's origins date back to the Spanish conquistadors. Still, once rodeos touched down in the American West, there was no stopping their popularity. The first organized rodeo to pop up in the American territories came in 1852. Where else but Texas? The event was billed as a bullfight, with the rodeo as an afterthought, until it garnered so much attention that news spread all over the United States. Any given rodeo event encompassed plenty of side attractions, not just the bucking bulls that are still popular today. There would have been lassoing, racing, steer wrestling, and practically anything else you can conceive of doing with irritated cattle desperate to shake off an annoying human. Thanks to the likes of Bill Pickett's and Buffalo Bill, the rodeo became ingrained in the Wild West, with massive sprawling events boasting all kinds of amenities and attractions. Rodeo stars traveled throughout the Wild West, making a fortune off their talents. Since time began, people have been competing against one another, and the rough and tumble citizens of the Wild West were the perfect audience for the spectacle of two or more people pitted against each other in the name of sport.
All I'm doing is making bets on Big Ed here winning the flapjack contest.
Flapjacks is my favorite food.
Most of these competitions evolved out of the industries prevalent in the American West, such as logging and mining. Contests included rock drilling, steamboat racing, log rolling, and axe throwing, and no competition was complete without a cheering crowd. But not all competitions sprang out of industry. Skating competitions, both on ice and on wheels, also drew crowds, as well as gymnastics and races of all sorts: foot, horse, and even sleigh. Many competitors became hometown heroes like the icons that populate the sporting stages of today. By far the least flattering form of entertainment to come out of the Old West, minstrel shows didn't age well. Britannica defines minstrel shows as the comic enactment of racial stereotypes, and it's hard to think of a more succinct way to describe it. Yet in the Old West, minstrel shows were all the rage. They began by creating one of the most notorious performance styles in modern history: blackface. Minstrelsy originated in 1830s New York, but it grew far more popular in the West and evolved into its very own industry, with unique styles, costumes, and makeup. But minstrel shows included more than just harmful stereotyping, although the distortion was always at the foundation. Minstrel shows included music, dance, and sometimes even burlesque and opera, though always through a mocking comedic lens. While minstrel shows evolved to include white and black performers, including women, growing inclusiveness and tolerance in society meant that they had an expiration date, and so disappeared around the 1950s. Nonetheless, their artistic legacy, if you can call it that, persisted in music and television shows of later decades. Emblematic of the American West cruelty, animal fights were a huge source of entertainment, and there was a whole mess of variety for any fans of cruelty and blood sport. Animal fights could include any manner of combatants, but the most popular were dogfights, cockfights, and bizarre and brutal bear and bull fights. Cockfighting and dogfighting involved trainers pitting their champion animals against each other. Cockfights in particular had very specific aesthetics: fighting arena lined with wood or chicken wire, with benches or stadium seating to allow for public viewing, all for a price, of course. The noise level would have been raucous, with the two birds fighting to the death before a screaming crowd, almost always emboldened by betting and booze. Bull and bear fighting, meanwhile, was another staple out west, particularly in California. Tracing its origins back to ancient Rome, these events were standard Sunday afternoon entertainment for many. Right after church, they would flock to the bear pit to watch two animals battle to death, bear collared to a pole defending itself from a raging bull. It was always the main event in an afternoon full of festivities. The sport was so widespread that it was a major contributor to the California grizzly bear's extinction, an animal which was estimated at 10,000 strong at one point. The Wild West may not be commonly associated with the great American pastime of baseball, but believe it or not, the game was popular on the frontier. When the creator of baseball, Alexander Joy Cartwright Jr., joined the California Gold Rush, he brought his game with him.
Welcome, my friends, to the first ever playing of a new sport. A sport of my own devising.
The sport caught on out west, and while no professional leagues were formed, baseball was played throughout western towns and settlements. Teams popped up everywhere, with San Francisco boasting 2 teams, the Eagles and the Red Rovers. Oakland fielded the Live Oaks, and Kansas City formed the Antelopes, who counted Wild Bill Hickok as a fan. But it wasn't just bigger settlements that formed teams. Small towns like Ninninger City, Minnesota, now a ghost town, had their own baseball team before they faded away. It was in 1869, though, that baseball really ignited out west, when the Cincinnati Red Stockings went on tour and played against amateur teams scattered across the frontier, culminating in an exhibition against the San Francisco Eagles. In front of a sellout crowd, the Eagles were defeated, but the West's fervor for the sport only grew. Circuses took on many forms in the American West, but whatever form they took, the general line of entertainment was the same. All manner of performances took place, from Russian Cossack riders to trapeze artists, animal acts that would nowadays be classified as animal cruelty, and main events that brought the scattered crowd together in one final grand crescendo. Perhaps the best-known show was Buffalo Bill's Wild West, which he toured around America. He included somewhat inaccurate historical reenactments, as well as Native Americans, exotic animals, rodeos, and other sports.
Buffalo Bill presented the real Lakota Indians that people had read about in the dime novels.
It was essentially a one-stop showing of all things we now associate with the Wild West. These types of shows coincided with the growth of more traditional circuses such as Barnum and Bailey and Ringling Brothers, both of which featured similar elements, including fairgrounds and exotic animal acts.